Students and friends and family. Anyways, this is the second video I'm creating about the economics behind the COVID-19 crisis. In this video, I'm going to focus more on microeconomics, and I'm going to especially talk about some of the economics behind social distancing and why we need it, why we maybe need the government involved to help enforce it. So basically, I want to introduce you to basically what we're doing now so everyone knows something about this. Here I've displayed basically two what I'll call pods. They're basically families, but not everyone's hunkered down with their families. Some of us are with roommates. I'm with my dog. If you're with your friends, that's okay too. The point is that we've all had to choose the people that we trust and that are going to be in the bubble with us during this crisis, right? So we have two pods here, and basically, when everyone's in the pod, everyone's safe, everyone's spending time together, hopefully not arguing too much. And then what happens is we need resources, so we have to go out into the world. So here I've depicted two members, one from each of these pods has to go out into the world, maybe to get groceries, or before social distancing, maybe they went to a conference or a party or a festival or a concert or something like that, and they came into contact, in this case, with one other person. Now, obviously, if they were to give each other the virus, or one of the people were to give the other person the virus, they would bring it back home and infect all the people in the pod. So what you see here is, the cost of, getting the virus is bringing it home to your loved ones. And obviously the decision-making process about the types of risks we want to take should have something to do with the risk factors of our loved ones. So I would be making different decisions than I'm making now as a 34-year-old man who lives with a dog if I lived with an 80-plus-year-old grandparent. And I think we should all realize the realities of that. And in reality, here I've depicted 6 pods with stars representing the people. In reality, there's, thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even millions of pods in some of these cities, right? So, the complexity of people going out and interacting, you can just see the complexity of that and the number of interactions you might have. As a exercise, you might think of the number of people that you would bump into on a regular work day, say maybe 10, 15, 20, 25, and then think of the number of other people that those people would bump into. And pretty quickly you get to a very, very large number of people that you're indirectly having interactions with on any given day. Now, we've totally shut that down to a halt at this point. And this really brings me to 2 economics lessons right away. The first one's about externalities. And the idea is that if you're not practicing good social distancing, you're imposing an externality on your community, all those other pods. Basically, an externality is any side effect of your commercial, or in this case, social activity that affects others without being reflected in prices. So prices have nothing to do with us, going to the grocery store. We pay for groceries, but we don't pay to use the air in the grocery store, which is basically what we're infecting, as well as the surfaces. So an example would be like a beekeeper. If they were to keep bees and the bees were to pollinate all the crops of the neighboring farmer, well, that would be a good thing. And the beekeeper can't stop his bees from doing this. He needs to let them do this in order to produce honey. But in the process, he's helping his neighbor out. And, maybe he could try and strike up an arrangement with his neighbor to get some money, but the neighbor's probably going to say, well, you need your bees, so I'm just going to take the pollination. Now, the not nice example is what we're currently going through, which is basically anyone who's out and about interacting with lots and lots and lots of people and maybe has the virus is behaving a bit like a bee. They're pollinating all the people with this virus, and they're bringing it home to their pods or to their families, right? So if you're not practicing good social distancing and you go to the store and you spread the virus, your choices are impacting your neighbors, and your neighbors really aren't in a position to know where you've been, right? So we kind of have to trust each other here. And this also leads to basically the free rider problem, which is the free rider problem, which is basically whenever someone uses a good or service without paying for it. So good public health, we'll call that a good. We all want to have good public health. We don't want to have viruses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, the price of improving the public health in this situation is social distancing, and we're all finding out that this is in fact very costly. Now, some people are losing their jobs, so it's actually financially costly for them, but other people, it's just plain annoying, and it's just plain disruptive to our lives, so we're finding it is very, very costly to be kept indoors. Unfortunately, the benefits of better public health are asymmetric. So the elderly are going to gain more from improving this situation than the younger people, because the mortality rate is much higher if you're over the age of 80. So this has led to what we've seen in terms of young people, having parties, going to the beach, still enjoying St. Patrick's Day in Kingston, Ontario, tisk tisk. All these things are not good social distancing, and young people are basically saying, well, it's not going to affect me, so, in a way, screw you. Anyways, so there's two solutions to this problem. The first is what I would call, well, there's more than two solutions to this problem, but in a crisis situation where we have to move quickly, I've seen two solutions to this problem. Now, we could try and create a market for good public health in some way and solve the problem that way. Maybe in the long term we can do that, but I haven't thought about that yet. So let's just talk about these two. The community solution would be to basically implore everyone on your Facebook newsfeed to do the right thing, and basically to publicly shame them if you catch them doing the wrong thing. And this is kind of what the first response to this was. You see lots of news articles and memes trying to get people to basically follow the rules. And if everyone buys in, then we can come together and protect the community. The problem is this only works in small or tight-knit communities, but not so much in larger ones. Most people live in large cities. I only know a fraction of my neighbors. I don't even know the names of all the people I live in the building with, although I have found this situation has brought us closer together. So if that doesn't work, which it didn't, then you kind of come to the government solution, which is to mandate people to stay home. Basically say, if you go out, you're breaking the law, we will fine you, we will put you in jail, we will use the military to send you back home. And so if we have to go down this road, which we're starting to in many states and provinces, then basically you have the government telling you where you can and can't go. Now, the problem with this, of course, is enforcement. Laws only work if they're kind of socially accepted. So, we can't punish every single person who breaks the rules, especially in this case, because it's very hard to see who's breaking the rules out there. So, in this case, the government solution is it's going to work in some regards. It tells everyone that this is more serious, and maybe in some small cases we're going to give people fines, but we're still essentially going to rely on people's goodwill. Now, all of this reminds me of some lessons about economic development. So now we're kind of maybe back to macroeconomics a bit. And I'm just thinking about, what this social distancing and, kind of existing in smaller groups, even though the internet is obviously a way to interact with the whole world, existing in smaller groups, what that means and, what that means for our economy, but also for us as humans. So I really believe what makes humans special is our ability to cooperate outside of our kin groups. So, bees, for instance, can cooperate at high scale because they're all related to each other. But humans have the ability to cooperate with people they don't know. And there's all sorts of institutions, including markets, that are set up to allow us to do this. But if you think not that far back in history, if you think of your ancestors, I'll use my ancestors in Scotland as an example. As late as the 1800s, they lived for 100 years in the same small rural community that had maybe 200 or 300 people, of which they were related to most of them. So there's maybe 2 or 3 family groups that were intermarrying and intermingling in this town. So in a sense, we're being forced back into these smaller pods with limited contact with the outside world. And basically, we're experiencing the start of a recession because of this, because we're kind of going back in time here. So we have all sorts of institutions, which I could probably do a video about each of these institutions and how they're used basically to help us cooperate at scale. But for instance, money. In a barter system, I have to, either find someone who has what I want and I have what they want, or we need to trust each other that we're going to pay each other back in the future if I give them something today. So money gets rid of this trust problem. So basically, if the money is good, the money is good. I don't need to trust the person giving the money if it's good, cold, hard cash, right? Corporations, they coordinate large international supply chains. When's the last time you actually thought about all the things that had to happen for the products that are on the shelves of your store? I bet we're all thinking a little bit more seriously about all the magic and maybe not so magical stuff that goes into that. So that's kind of what international supply chains do. Another example would be nation states or just countries. So like I'm Canadian, and whenever there's a war or an attack or something, we appeal to your kind of sense of national identity to get through the crisis. And we all believe as Canadians we need to band together. We maybe are more likely to put a flag out front of our home. We're more likely to be polite to each other, even though apparently we're polite to each other all the time. So we have a national identity that helps us to band together, to work together. And basically what that national identity is a bunch of, shared stories and ideas that we have about each other. And speaking of shared stories, this is exactly what religious groups are. A Christian is somebody who shares the Bible as a story that they share, that they believe in. And in the Bible are all sorts of suggestions for how to work together in communities, what you should and should not do. So these are also ways to try and enforce or to compel people to good behavior. I just thought of, just off the top of my head, I was able to think of so many ways that what we're doing right now relates to economics, and also, what this should teach us about the world we live in. It's important to reflect on all the things that normally happen without us even knowing that they're happening. I go to the grocery store and all the stuff that I need is there, where maybe not so long ago, I would have had to have access to all the food, clothing, all the things that I would need, and I would need to think very seriously about how I was going to get these things. The fact of the matter is, I would not survive very long out there in the wild, and so I'm starting to be very grateful for some of these things right now, and just to think in a deep way about how our modern economy works, how complex it is. The fact that no one person really knows how it all works is really fascinating to me right now. And so I love the kind of online discussions that these videos might create, so I'm going to keep making them. Thank you.